It's the end of the year and time for me to be Mystic Greg again with my predictions for what will happen in the next 12 months. But first, how did I do last year? Let's take a look. We won't be leaving the EU at the end of March. I believe Parliament, not necessarily the government, will decide to extend Article 50. Secondly, there will be a second referendum in 2019. The people's vote will happen, and horror of horrors, the Daily Mail will support staying in the EU. I don't believe Mrs May will be Prime Minister this time next year. And more controversially, I think Jeremy Corbyn will also be on his bike by next December. Now, I know everyone has had the B word up to here, so apologies if my predictions are dominated by Brexit, but I'm not going to risk betting on Michelle's love life again. Well, on Brexit, I was spectacularly wrong.
Yep.
So pretty pathetic there. However, on my other two predictions, I was 100% right on one. That was Theresa May is no longer the Prime Minister. And almost right on the second, that Jeremy Corbyn would be gone by December. So here we go for 2020. I'm going to start with a football prediction. England will win the European Football Championships this summer. Secondly, I'm predicting that although we will leave the EU in January, we will, by the end of the year, be involved again in an almighty battle with the EU over terms, and leaving without a deal will be back on the table. Thirdly, I'm predicting that Corbyn will be replaced as Labour leader by someone who will be well to the right of him, and there's an element of sanity will have returned to the Labour Party. And finally, the US Senate will acquit Donald Trump, but he won't win the presidential election in November.
Okay, well, I personally am less optimistic. I reckon Trump will win. He won't be impeached fully. As for the EU situation...
No, I didn't say he wouldn't be... I don't think he'll be impeached fully, but what will happen is he'll lose the election.
Don't think he will.
I think he's going to win.
What do the others say?
Trump wins.
I think
Trump
Trump
wins.
absolutely wins, yeah.
I think you're right.
By a landslide.
I think this has damaged Trump below the waterline.
No.
I think it just makes it look like the establishment's against him. Same thing that Boris does all the time.
Do you know there's a company called Moody Analytics in America, and they've called, it's a financial institution, and they've called every election right since 1980, and they have done 3 kind of different scenarios, and Trump wins every single time.
Even if Mike Bloomberg gets the Democratic nomination?
By a landslide, because what Moody's are saying is, if the economy's good, and people will vote on what their pocketbooks are.
Economy won't be good. Anyway.
Back to Femi's working.
As for the EU situation, well, it took us 3.5 years to negotiate an 11-month transition period, and Boris Johnson's next plan is to negotiate a permanent deal. So basic math says that he's not going to get that done in 11 months. On top of that, the deal that he's signed to take us out of the EU says that we're under a legal obligation to negotiate the sort of deal described in the political declaration. And that political declaration says we will have comprehensive, deep regulatory cooperation with the EU. What that means is following the rules of the EU but no longer having any say. So he said one thing in his manifesto and one thing in the legally binding withdrawal deal. That is a recipe for chaos. So yes, you're entirely right there.
What about the football?
You got banter at that.
What do you think on the football?
I'd love to... Listen, my heart says it. I suppose I've been around too long where they just come up short, because in '96 when football came home and Gaza missed that goal by about that much, if that had gone... I hope you're right.
But remember, both semi-finals and final were at Wembley.
Yeah, which is a huge boost. It's an absolutely huge boost. You think... Did you name someone for the Labour leadership? You didn't, did you?
No, I just think... I can't believe...
To the right, is what you said.
Well, I think if the Labour Party chooses another Corbyn acolyte, then I think they're going to be in terrible trouble.
It is incredible. They still, even now, this many days after the election, they still haven't realised why they lost. They still don't understand why. They're blaming Brexit, and they're blaming a biased media. And
people who didn't vote. I love that. It was the didn't vote.
Yes, the didn't vote.
Where does this end?
But somebody like my fear is somebody like Rebecca Long Bailey will get at least. I mean, she's an acolyte of Corbyn, and she believes in his brand.
But you don't vote Labour anyway.
No, I don't.
So why is she your fear?
I want a fantastic Labour Party. I want a tough Labour Party. I want a Labour Party that can win back the Northern Heartlands, because the party it exists
you don't
to
want the Tories
protect.
to win a second term?
I didn't say that. What I said was working class people deserve a Labour Party that works to protect them, to look after them. That's what it was. That's what it exists for.
And if Rebecca Long-Bailey becomes the leader of the Labour Party,
it'll be Corbyn again.
Exactly. You can, if you sculpt a new Labour leader out of the mould of the Labour leader that delivered the biggest defeat for the Labour Party in 84 years, you are destined to lose again. And I personally do not fancy 10 more years of Boris Johnson.
Who do we think? I think Jess Phillips.
Femi and I also agree on one other thing. The Labour Party, the biggest difficulty for the Labour Party is they've got to shift and move to believing in proportional representation, because they probably will never win again otherwise.
Yeah.
But the simplest shift they have to do is to listen to the people who voted for them. That's the simplest thing they can do next time. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I really fancy Jess Phillips. I fancy Lisa Nandy. I think both of those people could win back the Heartlands.
Yes, they're in a period of reflection now, which means just basically staring into the dregs of their tea leaves.
Of course.
I'm going to give my predictions.
Yes, go on.
Nostradamus. Greg, you're going to give up flying and go everywhere by catamaran.
Thank you very much.
Carol, you're going to revive the People's Vote campaign.
Oh yeah.
Greg,
We just had a People's Vote.
Nick is going to declare himself non-binary.
Yes.
Yes.
And Femi, you're going to become the paid spokesman for the ERG group.
Of course.
But
See
hang on.
how right I'm going to be.
What about you? Well, you're going to fill your deep freeze.
Yes.
I'm going to make turkey soup.
Yeah, you are. So what happens then? The more just wrangling over Brexit then, Greg, through the whole of next year?
No, not through the whole of the year. I think you'll get a 6-9 month. It'll all go under the radar. But I think come the end of the year, I don't see how you can get They're committed by they're now putting into a Parliamentary Act. They're committed that we will have a deal by the end of the year, and I don't think you'll get it. And then you're back to that miserable argument about whether or not we leave on no deal or we keep
I don't
negotiating.
understand why, and I'm not saying I've had this conversation, but why create a needless red line? Why create a pointless cliff edge when you can just say, we've got Brexit done, everyone can relax, we don't have to talk about it ever again?
Because that's the deal they did with Farage.
I know. What? That they would do...
Prior to the election.
They'd do the deal in the next 11 months.
Farage dropped all his candidates because
all
all the candidates
Farage
in the
doesn't
Tory
matter
areas.
anymore.
But if those candidates had stood in the Tory areas, they would have a much smaller majority.
But it's the most pointless piece of posturing I've ever seen. Putting it into law that we have to leave the EU, we have to leave the end of the transition period, no matter what, in December. It makes zero sense if he has a majority of 80, meaning he can change it on a whim. He cannot be stopped. He has absolute power.
But also
that's why I believe it's what they promised the Brexit Party.
But you also said that no deal will be back on the table, and I think you're right in the sense that I don't think we'll leave with no deal. But Boris can do that now. This is his trump card now, a card that couldn't be played when Mrs May was in power, but now it can be played.